Welcome, tennis fans, to the 34th episode of Tennis Traverse, Exploring the Game, the podcast that delves into the heart of the tennis world. I'm your host, Ivy J. And in today's episode, I'll be breaking down the actions at Monte Carlo and previewing the finals. Before we begin, I want to make a short announcement that I have a newsletter. I've been promoting it like crazy for the past few episodes, and I figured that I'll just give it like a one-sentence promote today. So basically, I started a newsletter via Substack that will be delivered to your inbox every week Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And basically, the newsletter will contain some special information and a preview into the next episode. So yeah, if you're interested, please just go to my show notes and you'll see the link to subscribe to that. It'll just be one letter per week. Before we begin, please follow all of my social medias, that is Instagram and Twitter, using @TennisTraverse, that is @TennisTraverse. If you're listening on YouTube, comment, like, and subscribe. If you're listening on other streaming platforms, please rate my show. And let's get right into today's episode. So I want to start off with talking about some general stuff first, and then I want to transition to basically some like the semifinal matches and how the players got there. So let's start with Alcaraz withdrawing. So I was scrolling through Twitter the other week and I saw that he was playing with an arm brace, which means that his arm was having trouble, and a lot of people were recording him on Twitter and saying how on his forehand especially, how he's slicing every ball and he can't hit a proper form. So I was a little bit worried, but I thought it's going to be fine because like a lot of players will often come into the tournament with like a slight injury, and after training for a few weeks or days still like sort of overcome it, but he didn't, and he said unfortunately he had to withdraw, and I fully understand his decision, and I think it's normal, and I don't think that's like anything major is going on. I think it's just he had a minor injury, and I feel like it's better for him to not force to play, and I think that's really smart of him. Okay, that's that. And then I want to talk about Umpires and Clay. So I want to talk about how there's just a lot of different, I don't want to say controversies or like conflicts, but there are just a lot of sort of talking on the internet because of what happened in Monte Carlo, because a lot of balls were called in by the umpire, and because we don't have an automatic like a Hawkeye that's able to actually tell us where the ball is, the umpire is always making the final decision, and it might not go with what the Hawkeye says when we see it. And I think it's just really hard for Clay to sort of have the automatic line system, because when the ball bounces, the ball, like the mark gets bigger in a way, so it's really difficult. I don't want to get into the logistics behind it, but just know that it's really hard to implement a Hawkeye system, and most Clay tournaments doesn't have it. And yeah, I feel like part of it, I'm definitely not taking anything away. I think some of the refs do have some controversial calls, but I just think we can't blame it all on the refs. It's just the Clay of condition, and that's all we all know that Clay will be like this, so I guess we can't blame everything on the refs, just that point. Okay, and then I just want to talk about one match, and then after this match I want to go straight to the 4 semifinal players and break them down individually. So I want to talk about Holger Rune versus Grigor Dimitrov. This match was amazing. Obviously, Holger, he hasn't been doing that well. He basically fired his coach like 3 times within like the past year, and he's working again with Patrick. I have no idea how to pronounce his last name. I'm sorry. Monterrago, I think. Sorry, I know it's wrong. But anyways, I feel like he's been finding his form recently because he played an incredible match against Dimitrov, and he actually beat Dimitrov, which is insane to me because Grigor had an incredible run at Miami where he made it to the final, and he beat Hubert Hurkacz Carlos Alcaraz and Alexander Zverev in Miami, so he's obviously really hot coming into this, whereas Holger, he really isn't. However, I do want to point out that this could be like a key factor, which is the surface, because Miami's on hard court, and in my opinion, I feel like Holger's game really suits the clay surface. So yeah, okay. I just want to talk about that match because it was really close. Holger won the first set with a score of 11-9 in the tiebreak, lost the second 3-6, won the third in the tiebreak of 7-2. And I'm looking at the stats right now. I think the thing that set them apart was going to be... Honestly, I can't find any, not gonna lie. Like, in a way, Grigor had better stats because he had a 73% more win on first serve compared to Holger's 64%. And Grigor had converted 3 out of 10 break points, whereas Holger converted 1 out of 4. And to be honest, I think this is just like the beauty of tennis again. I'll talk about this later as well, but Grigor won 127 points in total, whereas Holger won 125. So he actually won the score-wise by 2 more points. But in tennis, it's like, even if you won technically by 2 more points, you can still lose the match. And I think this is a perfect example. And a lot of you guys may wonder how that happened. It can happen if you're just like up on your opponent's serve, like for example you're up 30 love and then your opponent just fired down 4 aces, so that 2 points, I don't want to say go to waste, but in a way it won't count towards your final score, like the score line, because your opponents automatically won that game. So it's just the points you won when you didn't win that game, if that makes sense. Okay, that's that. I really liked this match. I watched it, so if you guys want to go watch it, please check it out. And then I will move on to the semifinal. I'll track down each players, and then after this I'll talk about the final prediction. Okay, so we'll start off with Novak Djokovic because he's the world number 1. So we'll just start it off from him. Okay, so I would say that he played well compared to his performance at Indian Wells and Australia, like this year so far. So let's just talk about his first round match. He played his first round match against Roman Safiullin, and I talked about this before on my podcast, but Roman Safiullin is an incredibly talented player. He beat Alcaraz last year at the Paris Masters, and I think that's when I fully understood how talented he was. And Djokovic beat him by a score of 6-1, 6-2, so that is just a huge, complete dominating win. And I watched the highlights, and I could say that Djokovic was playing he never had this season. He was actually going for every single ball, and he's all making it in despite sorry, you can hear the car honking, but despite not having a coach because he fired his coach. Well, he didn't fire, but they part ways because I feel like he just wanted to change things up a bit, and he's just really, I feel experienced, so it works for him to sort of change things up a bit if he feels like it will help his game. Okay, the second match was against Musetti. This was a rematch last year. They played here last year, and Musetti actually won. And so this was basically a revenge for Djokovic. I feel like this match, I also watched the highlight. Even though he played against someone who I would consider better on clay than Roman Safiullin, I still felt that Djokovic wasn't as in top form compared to when he was playing against Safiullin, if that makes sense. I don't know, I just thought that he seemed tired. And Monte Carlo has a great weather, so I was kind of confused. And I'll talk about this in the semifinal match as well. But he still won in 2 sets regardless. And looking at the stats, I think the one thing that set them apart was breakpoint conversion opportunities. They both had 6 breakpoints. Break points, as in they have a chance to break, but Novak converted 5 out of 6, whereas Musetti converted 3 out of 6. And I think part of it is just because of Novak's he's just really experienced, and his mental game is just on top. And to be honest, we can't take anything away from Musetti because he has been playing really well ever since he had a baby. Well, he didn't have a baby, but he became a dad. So I think we can't take anything away from him either. Okay, and then the third round was between Novak Djokovic and Alex de Minaur. So Alex de Minaur is currently having, in my opinion, one of his best seasons yet. He's just really on top of his game. He's beating a lot of really good players and he's just really solid. But this was a match off of clay, which I feel like is a surface that he isn't as comfortable on compared to hard courts. I don't know. His game is just running a lot. Even though the clay makes the ball slower, I think it's harder for him to use that as an advantage. But Novak, well, if we're talking about Novak, I feel like Novak sort of is still at the same level he was compared to Musetti. He also seemed tired, but he still, regardless, beat Alex de Minaur with a score of 7-5 and 6-4. And then that leads us to the semifinal, and we'll talk about his opponent next, which is Casper Ruud. So I think I've made it quite clear here that I really, really enjoy watching Casper Ruud play tennis. And a lot of people are like, he's so boring and he doesn't win any titles past 250. Well, yes, he does. He haven't, but still at the same time, I really love how he plays tennis by focusing on the basics. And I think it's something I really need to learn. And he has something in common with me, which is that his backhand isn't as strong as his forehand, which if any of you guys know me personally or have played tennis with me, you know that that's like super, super true. Like, I can't play a backhand. Even though I'm working on it, I feel like I'm on the same page as him because he's also working on it. And yeah, I just feel like I have a lot of stuff to relate to him about, and he also have a podcast called Root Talk. So yeah, okay, his year this year has been so amazing compared to last year. Last year, which just wasn't it. Like, he, I believe, only won one title, and it was a 250, and it was just not it. But this year, I believe he has 24 wins so far, and he's 6th in the live ATP race. So his year started off in Australia, where he lost third round against Caminori. I don't know, I just think Australia, like, the surface just isn't for him, because although it's hard court, he always seems to lose early there, or maybe it's just because he can't find his form. But I watched the match in round 2 against Purcell, and I was actually kind of surprised because he was playing really, really well, and it wasn't like how I knew him. Like, his playing style sort of changed. Like, before, he's always defending. Like, he's always defending. There's not once that he's there's like a few times that he's trying to go for the ball, but the majority of the game is him trying to maintain a rally and finding an absolutely golden opportunity to approach. But this time stuff has kind of changed, and he's trying to go for some shots he normally wouldn't do last season, and it was kind of surprising to me in a good way. And then came Los Cabos. Los Cabos, he beat Tsitsipas, which is something I really want to talk about because, yeah, okay, I'm not going to spoil anything, but I really want to talk about it, and I'll mention it later. But in the final, he lost to Jordan Thompson, and I don't think anyone expected him to lose here, because, I don't know, I think, because he's obviously the favorite, and I don't know, it was just kind of sad. Anyways, we'll move on. Mexican Open, he also made it to the final, and he beat Chris Eubanks, Ben Shelton, and Holger Rune along the way. So he obviously is having a great season, and he lost to Alex de Minaur in Mexican Open. And then we have Indian Wells. He also made it really far. He made it to the quarterfinal where he lost to Tommy Paul. In Miami, he also made it to the round of 16 where he lost to Nicholas Jarry. In my opinion, this was sort of really, I don't know, I was kind of scared that he's going to dip back to his form like last season, because I didn't expect him to lose in 2 straight sets against Nicholas Jarry, because I feel like he always had success. Well, he hadn't, but I feel like because based on his performance in Indian Wells, I thought he would perform better. So I was kind of worried. But in Estoril, my worry sort of was like ceased, because he made it to the semifinal and he was a big tournament like contender, but he lost to Pedro Martinez, which still was kind of surprising, but Pedro is an incredible clay court master, so we can't say anything. And then he's now in Monte Carlo. So his season's obviously going really, really well, and his first match was against Tabilo. He beat him 6-2, 6-4. And then we have a match against Hubert Hurkacz. And to be honest, I wasn't that worried. The only thing I was kind of worried about was Casper's return position, because he's sort of like Medvedev in a way that he stands really, really, really far behind the baseline. So he can sort of like manage to return a serve if it's really, really fast. And I was worried because Hubert has this huge serve. So I was worried about how Ruud is going to adjust to it, but he did, and he beat him with a score of 6-4 and 6-2. And I was really surprised in that second set because he was playing really well, and then he was playing against Humbert, and Humbert is also having an incredible season this year. He, I believe, had a title in Dubai where he beat he beat Gael Monfils first round, Andy Murray second round, Hubert Hurkacz third round, Medvedev in the semifinal, and then Bublik in the final. So it was an incredible run. So obviously he's having an incredible year as well. And their match actually went to the deciding set, but Casper managed to clinch that deciding set with a score of 6-1. So it was, I would say, really a dominating way to win the deciding set. And I think Casper, in a way, is just more experienced at a bigger stage, and he's more calm. Like, the mental game definitely played a huge part in here. And then, which leads us to the semifinal, which is Djokovic versus Casper Ruud. I do want to talk about the other two semifinalists, and then we'll just move on to breaking down the two semifinal matches, and then I'll talk about the final. So the first semifinal player on the other side is Stefanos Tsitsipas. And to be honest, he had quite a similar tournament schedule to Casper Ruud, but I feel like some tournaments he did better, some he did worse. And to be honest, I would say I was underestimating him the whole season. I feel like part of this is just because he's always the person that will just like sometimes in a tournament just lose randomly, and then against like some unseeded player, and you're like, how did that happen? But I feel like this year it's been happening less and less, which is obviously a good thing. But I want to talk about his match. He started off his year in Australia, and he got beaten by Taylor Fritz in the fourth round. It was an incredible match. If you guys haven't watched it, go watch it. Sorry I don't have this linked, but I have some matches I talked about linked, and if you guys want to go check it out, click my show notes. And then it was Los Cabos. He lost to Casper Ruud, and I'll talk about this later, of course, in the semifinal. Mexican Open, he lost to Alex de Minaur, where basically Alex de Minaur beat Casper Ruud in the final. So Tsitsipas lost in a deciding set, but he actually won that first set with a score of 6-1. So it's kind of surprising to see Alex coming back. And Neil Wells, he made it to the round of 16, where he lost to Jiri Lehecka, and I honestly can't complain. Like Lehecka has been playing really, really well. So yeah. Okay, and then in Miami, it was kind of surprising, but he was playing against Denis Shapovalov, which is like one of the top players a few years ago. Obviously had an injury, and he had a whole basically surgery, so he obviously isn't at his top game yet. But he still beat Tsitsipas, which I was kind of shocked, but at the same time, I feel like it happens. So yeah, and then we come to Monte Carlo. He had a walkover in the second set. In the first round, and it was like sort of out of nowhere. Like, he played really well in the first set. He beat Laszlo De Gere with a score of 6-3, and then in the second set, De Gere was actually coming back a bit. Like, he was actually hitting balls really, really well, but he was just like retired out of nowhere, and I was like, okay. And yeah, he basically picked up that win. And then he played against Lecce, and I was kind of surprised because he bageled him and breadsticked him. I was like, huh? Because Echeverry is really playing really well on clay courts. And I was just like, okay. It was kind of surprising to me. And yeah, it was just a completely dominating game from him. And then we have Alexander Zverev versus Stefanos Tsitsipas. I thought it's like the time for Zverev to sort of clinch a title, because a big title. That's because he's coming back from a devastating injury 2 years ago, and I feel like he deserves a really big title, but he lost to Stefanos. I actually haven't watched the highlights yet, but a lot of people were telling me how it was a close match, and looking at the score, it was. Steph won the first set 7-5, the second set tiebreak 7-3, and yeah, I probably will check out the highlights. And then quarterfinal compared to the round of 16 wasn't as exciting. He beat Karen Khachanov with a score of 6-4, 6-2, and that basically leads us to the semifinal, which I will talk about. His opponent, Jannik Sinner, I don't think I have to talk much about him, because he's basically my conversation subject for like every episode since the new season started, because he's literally having a 34-2 start of the year, which is insane to me. I think it's 34. I'm actually not sure. I'm sorry. But okay, so let's just talk. He won Australia Open, beating Djokovic on the way. His run, I mean, this was sort of, I just didn't expect him to beat Djokovic and come back 2 sets down to Medvedev in a final was actually kind of insane as well. This run, I wouldn't say was magical, but it was still a really good run. In ATP Rotterdam, he also managed to win against Alex de Minaur in the final, so second title of the year. Third title, he lost, which is his first loss against Carlos Alcaraz in the semifinal. And then we have Miami. Miami, he also won the Miami title by beating Medvedev in the semifinal and final, and beating Dimitrov in the final. And his run this whole tournament was just kind of scary to me, because he beat his fellow Italian I'm gonna butcher the name, Vasori 6-3, 6-4, Grigor. That's the only game where it went to deciding set, and the deciding set score was 6-1. He beat Christopher O'Connell with a score of 6-4, 6-3, and then Thomas Machak with a score of 6-4, 6-2. Medvedev with a score of 6-1, 6-2, and then Dimitrov with a score of 6-3, 6-1. So it's just completely dominating. And then we go to Monte Carlo. He beat Korda with a score of 6-1, 6-2. Honestly, not surprised, even though Korda is someone we talk about a lot here, but I just feel like not surprising at all. He beat Struff with a score of 6-4, 6-2. Also, he beat Rune in the quarterfinal with a score of 6-4, and Rune won the second set 8-6 in the tiebreak, and then Sinner won the deciding set 6-3, and that lands us to the semifinal match 2, which is Tsitsipas versus Sinner. Okay, now we'll talk about the semifinals. So on if you're looking at it, you would say that it's going to be Novak Djokovic versus Sinner for the final, right? Spoiler alert, it's not. It's actually the complete opposite. It's Casper Ruud versus Stefanos Tsitsipas. I know, crazy, but we'll talk about it. So I want to talk about Djokovic versus Ruud's match first. So Casper has never beaten anyone who's ranked, I believe, in the top 5. He's just not really... Well, he always has his game, but when he's competing against someone who's slightly better than him, he's always sort of not able to come through nicely, and he actually has never won a set against Djokovic. So I want to talk about Casper's performance first. Actually, I want to talk about Djokovic's performance first. So he was confusing me. I was watching this tennis channel interview they did with Andy Roddick, and he was basically saying exactly what I thought. Like, this was just so confusing, because Djokovic looked so tired in the first set when it was like 2-all. no, not 2-all, like 1-1. He was like tiring, he was shaking his left hand, it was just like he was exhausted. I was like, huh, because the weather isn't bad. And then he just found his pace again and won the second set with a score of 6-1. In the first set he was down 1-4 and he manages to come up, but still he lost 4-6. And then in the third set he was down 1-4 and I was like, okay, he's losing his rhythm again. But then he manages to win 3 games in a row and I was like, okay, this is basically the Novak we all know, and he's gonna somehow find this win because obviously it's Novak. But then on his serving game, where he's trying to stay inside the game, he like made so many unforced errors and he ended off the game with a double fault. So I was like, this is like weird. It's like, I think I know him, but I don't. It's not the Novak I know. And it was just really, really weird. Yeah, it was just really weird. Okay. And then we'll talk about Casper. So Casper Ruud, I would say that this was one of the best matches he played. Obviously, he beat Djokovic, which he has never taken a set off of. And he won that first set with a score of 6-4. It was just like a dominating start. He won 4-1. He was up 4-1, but then Novak sort of started to find his form again, so he manages to close it out. And in the second set, I don't know what happened. I think Novak just has that clinch on anyone. It's just once he gets down a set, it's just like completely turned on and he's able to do whatever he wants on a tennis court, and the opponent just has to deal with it, and Casper deal with it with a 1-6 loss in a second. But in the third set he was up 4-1 and then Djokovic leveled it out and I was kind of concerned, but that double fall was kind of weird. Like, I don't know why Djokovic, like, I just, because he's always going to save match points, so that was just so unlike him. But I guess we can't expect anything from a player. I thought I knew like a lot about Novak, but apparently I don't. And to be honest, I think this is one of the best matches Novak played this year. Even though he lost, he played incredible against Roman Safelin in the first round, well, in the second round, but at the same time, it's like, I would consider Casper Ruud to be better suited on clay compared to Roman Safelin. So even though Novak lost, I still feel like he played good. Okay, and yeah, that's basically our first finalist, Casper Ruud. And his opponent, Stefanos Tsitsipas, played an incredible match with Jannik Sinner as well. I watched like 2 sets. I didn't watch the deciding set. I watched the whole Casper match, but the Stefanos match, I didn't know. The first set was like really weird. They were like all making mistakes. I was scrolling through Twitter and they were saying how it was just like really weird. Like both of them seemed so nervous in a way. It was just like wasn't normal. I don't know. I have no idea what happened. Anyways, the second set was more like it and Sinner won with a score of 6-3. He made like an incredible hold in one of the games. It was like a 60 minutes game, I feel like. It was just really, really close. And I was like, he hit this amazing shot where he was going back and hitting like a short cross court. It was actually insane. I'll see if I probably can find a link to it, so I'll leave a link down below. And then the third set, I unfortunately didn't watch it, but I have no idea how Steph managed to win in a score of 6-4. I'm obviously not taking anything away from him. It's just, I feel like from the way Jannik is playing, nobody could beat him. But I mean, this is in fact a different surface, so I can't factor that out. But I think just something to keep in mind, because this is really scary that Tsitsipas is able to beat, I feel like, one of, well, the best ATP players right now, the best ATP player right now. So yeah, it's kind of scary. Okay, now we'll do a finals prediction. Okay, wait, I just realized how long this episode's gonna be. It's gonna be like 35 minutes. Anyways, the final is going to be between Casper Ruud and Stefanos Tsitsipas. And I know that I want to apologize, first of all, that because I'm recording this on a Saturday, that by the time y'all are listening to it, you guys will already know who the winner is. So feel free to just click off. And if that's it, then I'll see you guys next episode. But if you guys want to still listen to my predictions, which will just be for, I don't know, for fun for me in a way. And if you guys just want to listen to if I'm right or not, please feel free to stick around. But if you don't, feel free to click off as well. So we have Tsitsipas versus Casper Ruud in the final. And I think it's going to be for Casper Ruud to win it all. I have several reasons. My first reason is because Casper Ruud, I feel like he really wants it. And I think he wants it more than Tsitsipas. So Casper, he had so many golden opportunities at like many finals, including 3 Grand Slam finals. But every time he plays against someone, it's someone who's ranked number 1 or number 2. His first Grand Slam final, I believe, was against Rafael Nadal on Roland Garros on French Open. So obviously he's gonna lose because it's Nadal on French Open. The second final of the Grand Slam was against Carlos Alcaraz on US Open court. So he lost. The third match was against Novak Djokovic actually last season, and he also lost. So all of these 3 players are like considerably one of the best players in the world right now, but I feel like Tsitsipas isn't as a high level compared to those 3, so I think it's a golden opportunity, and I think he really, really wants it. And the other reason is, I've said that I'll mention this later, but basically they played against each other in Los Cabos, and Casper actually won that match with a score of 6-4, 7-6, and then 7-4 in a tiebreak, so it was like a straight set win. And the thing I wanted to point out was that how, despite only having 5 aces compared to Steph's 12, he actually has an 88% win on first serve compared to 78% from Steph. And Steph was having trouble converting breakpoints. He had 5 breakpoint chances but lost all of them, whereas Casper had 1 breakpoint and he manages to convert it. So I think that was a huge drastic difference. And that's basically why I think Casper will win. And I think just on his run in general, Casper had a better run because he played 2 3-round matches against Humbert and Djokovic, and winning a 3-set match against Djokovic isn't something you can easily do. So obviously it's going to a really big point is that. What am I saying? Anyways, but I can't take anything away from Tsitsipas either because his run is also incredible. He beat Zverev, Karen Khachanov, Jannik Sinner, and Echeverry along the way. And I do want to point out that right now, maybe I would say that beating Sinner compared to Djokovic is actually more significant. Even though I do want to say that it's on clay court, but still, it's because Sinner is just the best player in the world right now. So I think that's something we definitely have to consider. But that's all. I think Casper's gonna win, but this sums up today's episode. Again, it's a long one. I don't know how in the world it became this long. I was just talking and this just happened. But thank you so much for listening. I had so much fun recording this for you guys. Again, follow all of my social medias if you haven't already at Tennis Traverse. That is at Tennis Traverse. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. Also, I'll be active on Twitter, I promise, during Grand Slams. Maybe I'll tweet something out just for Monte Carlo. Subscribe to my newsletter because it's really fun. You guys get like exclusive insights as to what I'm going to talk about for Monday. And rate my show if you're listening on other streaming platforms. If you're listening on YouTube, comment, like, and subscribe. Feel free to reach out to me too. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye.